Hey guys, welcome back. So today's going to be a little bit different. I had a request from a very good friend of mine to make a roasted beet and roasted garlic dip. Sounds really weird, especially if you're not a beet eater, but I promise you the garlic in this and the creaminess from a couple of the other ingredients just make it such an awesome dip to serve at parties. We've even had it over chicken before. It's just so good and so refreshing. It has such awesome ingredients in it. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through the steps to make it, and I hope you guys try it out and enjoy it. If you try it, let me know. I would love to hear if you've changed it a little bit, or if you've done a different version of it. I found it on Pinterest. The one on Pinterest I wasn't crazy about. It was a little more sweet than savory. So I switched it up and decided to roast the garlic and add that in. And so this just kind of gives it a little bit deeper flavor. It's really amazing. I'm really glad you guys are going to be here. It's a lengthy process, so bear with me, but we're going to get through it and you're going to be so glad you did. Okay, so I'm going to start with the ingredients that you're going to need to make this dip. So, of course, it's a beet dip, so you are going to need beets. Now, I personally like fresh beets. I've never made this dip with canned beets. They seem to be a little too mushy, and the point of roasting them is you want them to kind of soften up on their own. So, these are really large. You don't have to buy them this large. I'm thinking this is all they had, but we typically get these at Market Street, United's, any of your local grocery stores, farmers markets are going to have beets. This is what you're looking for right here. So I'll show you how to prep these in just a little while, but this is going to be one of your main ingredients for this. Let me set these off to the side. Now, the next ingredient that you're going to need is garlic. So again, I like fresh garlic. You just buy it in pods. Usually you can get 4 pods for like $2 or something like that. So I typically just buy a whole one of these, so we're going to use that. You'll need a couple of lemons for roasting. When you roast the garlic and the beets, I squeeze lemon juice over them. It just kind of brings their flavor out a little bit more, and you'll need some lemon juice for the dip as well. Now, another thing that you'll need is walnuts. So if you have a nut allergy or you just don't care for walnuts, you can omit this, or you can switch it out for a different nut. You can always add in pecans, or you could add in pistachios or cashews, any other nut. The traditional recipe that I found called for walnuts, and we actually like it with the walnuts, so we'll use that. We won't need this whole 2-cup bag, so don't worry about that. You'll have some left over for something else. Set those off to the side. Now, another main thing that you'll have to have is mascarpone. So I use mascarpone. You could use cream cheese. You could use well, I really think that's the only other thing you could use. You could probably use ricotta, but I like mascarpone because it's very creamy and very thick. So this is the brand that I buy. Whatever you can find at your local store is completely fine, as long as it is kind of the same consistency and texture as mascarpone. And goat cheese. So goat cheese kind of comes in 2 varieties around here. You can either get the crumbled goat cheese for like salads, or it comes in a whole log. I am a huge fan of goat cheese, so I always have this on hand. Again, you don't have to add this. You can add in blue cheese. You could add in feta or any type of kind of crumbly cheese. I just personally like goat cheese, so that's why I buy this one. You'll also need olive oil for roasting and salt and pepper. So those are really the only ingredients that you'll need for all this. It seems like a lot and it seems overwhelming, but once we put it all together, it goes really fast. So if you have all of this, you're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I just want to quickly go over the things that you'll need to prep and to make this dip. So knives. I have just a variety right here. It's really just whatever you're comfortable with. I typically use this bigger one to cut through the beets, and then these smaller ones to peel them. Now, if you have a vegetable peeler, feel free to use that. I personally just feel like I can peel a beet better with a knife, so that's just my thought. Cutting boards. Now, word of caution when handling beets. They are going to stain your hand, and they're going to stain whatever they come in contact with. So these are very old cutting boards. I don't care if they're stained. It's not a big deal to me. I'm just wanting you to know that's what's going to happen. So I just have a couple of different sized cutting boards here, and so That's kind of, again, up to you or whatever you have handy. You could even do it on a plate if you needed to. Now, you'll need a couple of pieces of aluminum foil, so I went ahead and did that. And then you will need a baking sheet lined with aluminum. Now, the reason I line it, again, beets stain. So I don't want my good cookie sheet stained with beet juice. So that's why I have covered it in aluminum foil. And also, heck, it keeps cleanup so much easier. And you will need a food processor. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you could easily use a blender. I've never tried to make this dip in a blender. I've always used a food processor. I love our food processor. It makes everything really quick, so I would suggest doing it in one of these if you have one. But if not, and you have some type of awesome blender I don't know about, which is very likely, by all means use that. But those are going to be the things that you will need. Also, go ahead and preheat your oven to 415 degrees and let that get hot, because these beets take time to roast. They are a root vegetable and they need longer to roast. So at this point, this is just some slow-mo shots of me cleaning and peeling the beets. You can wear gloves for this process if you want to save your hands from the beet stain. It will wash off with a couple of hand washes and some Dawn dish soap. I personally don't mind it. It's such a vibrant color. I like looking at it. Now, we've moved on to peeling garlic. A quick way to get garlic peeled is to take the knife and smash it. It'll break open and the skin just falls off. This is a really important detail. Garlic will burn quickly, so please check on it. You just want to get the garlic to a soft point. When garlic is roasted, it becomes almost sweet. It's such a great flavor. So beet greens, you can take them and you can chop them down and saute them, kind of like you would do spinach, kale, or collard greens. I would do them with a little bit of bacon, and they would make an awesome side to some roasted chicken or some fish or steak even. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, so now back to the garlic. So now that we've got it in the foil pack, salt, peppered, oiled, and lemoned, it's ready to go. So you're just going to kind of make a little pouch. And then go ahead and take that and lay it on your sheet tray. Okay, and now we're going to do the beets. So now that we've got them clean, we'll have to cut them up. You don't want to roast them whole. You want to try to make them a little bit smaller so that they roast a little more evenly. And again, these beets are really big, so I definitely want to cut them down a little bit, just so that it's a little easier to get them softer. May not even need all of these beets. So one of the side effects of having gastric is you don't eat a whole lot. So making a whole lot of food is not something I do anymore. My husband has had gastric as well, so he doesn't eat a whole lot. And we have one child who's pretty young. He doesn't eat a whole lot. Yeah, anyway, I've heard that teenagers tend to eat more, and I am not looking forward to that day. But as of right now, our family doesn't eat a whole lot of food. So I have learned that I don't have to make a giant meal to feed us. And when I do accidentally overcook, it's usually our lunch and dinner for a couple of days, which is really awesome. So food waste has dropped significantly in this house. Before I had gastric, I would refuse to eat leftovers, and I was just so incredibly wasteful with food, and it's just not okay to be that wasteful. It's so strange. I can never get my mind around the fact that we are a nation that is overweight and riddled with obesity, but we have children and families that go without eating. And it's crazy to me that we can be simultaneously underfeeding the important people in our world, our elderly and our children, and overfeeding ourselves. It's crazy to me. Anyway, so now that we've got all of our beets chopped, and I still have 2 big ones left, and I'll roast those at some point. We are going to do the same thing. We're going to squeeze some lemon juice over these beets. And again, I love lemon. I use lemon a lot when I cook. It just brings out flavors and everything. If you have a compost pile, this is like a dream recipe for you. Salt and pepper. Now this is sea salt that I'm using. I don't typically use regular table salt. We usually use pink Himalayan salt or sea salt, but table salt's fine. And a little bit of olive oil. And then again, wrap it up into a little package and toss it onto your sheet tray. Now, these are going to roast in the oven for close to an hour until they are soft. So sit back, have a glass of wine, watch one of your favorite TV shows, try to get your hands unstained, and we'll be back when they're done. Alright, so now our beets and our garlic have roasted, so we've taken them out of the oven, let them cool just a tad, and now I've got my food processor set up, got my beets, my walnuts, and my garlic. Now, you'll just need about 1/4 of a cup of walnuts. You don't need a whole lot, or whatever nut you choose, or again, if you want to leave that out, you certainly can. Not a big deal. So I have my mascarpone, so I'm going to go ahead and put in about half of this container, and this is a 8-ounce container. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in just half of it to begin with. You can adjust it for the creaminess and the consistency. I'm going to start with just half at this point and kind of go from there. And then I'm going to add in our beets. Maybe try to do it easier. Now these beets just came out of the oven, so they are still really hot. One just hit the ground. Don't worry about that guy. He made it to freedom. So, fun beet fact. In the Middle Ages, beets were used to treat blood disease. They weren't used as a food. And in a lot of other countries, they still use beets to dye clothing, and in Asian countries, they use beets to make cosmetics. So as you can see my hands, they stain. So they're used a lot of times in lip stains and in blush and in eyeshadow, which is pretty cool. So now I'm going to squeeze in the juice of 1 lemon, or half of a lemon, sorry. And yes, I scrape it on the edge and make sure to get some of that yummy pulp. I'm going to drop in my walnuts and my garlic. I left some of this on the other side, so I'm going to drop that in. Now I do have my goat cheese on hand. I don't usually add in the goat cheese until toward the end when I get all of this blended up. So once you get your food processor set up, go ahead and process it. I'm going to process this and get back with you guys. Here at the blending stage, you're looking for a smooth texture. You want to make sure that all of the beets, garlic, and walnuts have been broken down. You're also making sure that your cheese mixture is incorporated. A bit of white swirls won't kill you, but I like to make sure that it's mixed really well. Alright, so I've blended this up quite a bit, but it's still not the consistency that I like. So I added in a bit more mascarpone, the rest of the container. And now I've added in a little bit more lemon juice, so I am going to blend this up just a bit more. You want it to be very smooth. That's a consistency you're looking for. I like mine to be really smooth. I guess if you liked it a little bit more chunky, you could do it that way. Me personally, I like mine smooth. So I'm going to blend it up. Alright, so this is the consistency that you're looking for right here. As you can see, it's pretty smooth. There's no more lumps in there. All of the mascarpone has been mixed in, all of the nuts have been crushed up, and all of the beets have been blended. So at this point, this is when I would take some of the goat cheese and kind of drop it in and stir it throughout so that you kind of get bites of goat cheese as you eat this dip. And then I use the remaining goat cheese and a few of the walnuts as garnish, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So here is the finished product. Roasted beet and garlic dip. So as you can see, I've topped it with a little bit of goat cheese and some walnuts. So you can serve this again with just some crackers, some French bread, different veggies. It's such a yummy treat. I personally like to stick it in the refrigerator and let it get cool, but you can eat it immediately. I hope you try out this recipe. I hope you love it. By the way, it is the most gorgeous color you've ever seen in your life. Nothing beats that color. It's beautiful. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Yeah, that's good.
You like?
Yeah.
How much?
A lot.
You like me?
Yeah.
How much?
A lot.